That was 6 months ago, in the damp cradle of coastal Oregon, where the Pacific's roar mocked the silence of small-town grief. Brody Harlan, no, not Harlan yet, that name came later, like a chain disguised as salvation, had been 14 then, all sharp elbows and unspoken questions, the kind of boy who sketched forbidden dreams in the margins of his notebooks. Now, at 15, he sat in the grey institutional waiting room of the Coos Bay Youth Services office, legs folded under him on a plastic chair that smelled of bleach and forgotten hopes. The social worker, Ms. Elena Vargas, a woman with kind eyes etched by too many case files, slid a folder across the scarred laminate table. "Brody, this is it," she said, her voice soft as fog rolling in from the bay. "The Harlans have been vetted. They're solid, churchgoers, stable income from the mill. Mr. Harlan's a foreman, Mrs. Harlan teaches Sunday school. They fostered before, but you're their first adoption candidate." Brody's fingers traced the edge of the photo clipped to the folder, a stern couple in their late 40s, standing ramrod straight outside a white clapboard house that looked like it had been airlifted from a 1950s postcard. Elias Harlan, broad-shouldered with a salt and pepper beard clipped military short, eyes like polished flint. Ruth Harlan, her hair pulled into a severe bun, lips pressed thin as if guarding words better left unsaid. They smiled for the camera, but it was the smile of duty, not delight. "They don't know," Brody muttered, his voice cracking like driftwood underfoot. He meant the sketches hidden in his backpack, the ones of boys with hands intertwined under starlit skies, or the ache that bloomed in his chest when he watched the older boys at the group home roughhouse too close, their laughter brushing his skin like a promise he wasn't allowed to claim. Ms. Vargas leaned forward, her earrings catching the fluorescent hum. "They know you're grieving. They know you need structure. Give it time, Brody. This could be your fresh start." Fresh start. The words tasted like salt water, briny, choking. The accident replayed in fragments, his father's frantic glance in the mirror, his mother's murmured prayer to saints Brody had never believed in. "The shadows," she'd said. "What shadows?" The police report called it hydroplaning on black ice, a tragic slip of fate. But Brody had seen the flicker of fear in their eyes, the way the truck lurched not from the road's curve, but as if shoved by invisible hands. He signed the papers with a pen that bled ink, his signature a scrawl of defiance. The Harlan's truck idled outside, a Ford F-150 gleaming under the sodium lamps, Elias at the wheel, Ruth in the passenger seat clutching a thermos like a talisman. As Brody climbed in, the door sealing with a finality that echoed his heartbeat, Ruth turned, her gaze appraising, not welcoming. "Welcome to the family, son," Elias rumbled, extending a calloused hand that dwarfed Brody's. "Rules start now. No questions, no back talk. We build character here, not excuses." Brody nodded, throat tight, as the truck pulled onto Highway 101, the ocean a black void to their left. The Harlan home squatted on the outskirts of Bandon, a town of 5,000 souls where the dunes whispered secrets to the wind and the local diner served pie with a side of judgment. It was a 2-story Victorian with peeling gingerbread trim, surrounded by acres of Sitka spruce that Ruth swore kept the devil at bay. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and hymnals, every surface gleaming with the fervor of the saved. That first night, after a supper of meatloaf and green beans, eaten in silence broken only by Elias's grace, Brody was shown to his room, a Spartan space with a twin bed, a dresser, and a crucifix nailed above the headboard like a sentinel. Ruth lingered in the doorway, her floral apron starched crisp. "We pray together at dawn and dusk," she said, voice even as a metronome. "No television after 8. No music that isn't uplifting. And Brody, modesty is next to godliness. We'll get you proper clothes tomorrow." He stripped down in the dim light of a 60-watt bulb, the floorboards creaking under his weight, and slid under sheets that smelled of mothballs. Lying there, staring at the shadowed ceiling, Brody's hand drifted low, a guilty ritual born of loneliness. But the crucifix's gaze burned, and he pulled back, curling into himself instead. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying echoes of his mother's whisper. "It's them. The shadows." School started Monday at Bandon High, a brick behemoth where the hallways echoed with the slam of lockers and the murmur of futures half-formed. Brody slouched into homeroom, his new jeans stiff against his skin, the button-up shirt Ruth had ironed choking his collar. The teacher, Mr. Lyle, a wiry man with a mustache like a broom bristle, scanned the roster. Brody Ellis? New transfer. Take the empty seat by the window. Heads turned, eyes appraising the outsider with the haunted blue stare. Among them was Kai Rivera, 16 and all lean muscle from summers surfing the breaks at Face Rock. Kai's hair was a mop of black waves, skin kissed bronze by the coastal sun, his laugh a rumble that cut through the boredom like sunlight through fog. He was the kind of boy who wore board shorts under his jeans and carried the scent of salt and possibility. Hey, Kai said at lunch, sliding onto the bench across from Brody in the cafeteria, a tray of mystery meat between them. You're the foster kid, right? Heard Ruth Harlan's got you on lockdown already. Brody poked at his mashed potatoes, fork trembling. Adoption pending. There. Strict. Kai grinned, teeth flashing white. Strict? Man's a legend. Coached Little League like it was boot camp. But Ruth? She's the one who makes you feel like your thoughts are taxable sins. A laugh bubbled up in Brody, unbidden, warm as the first crack of dawn. It had been months since he'd felt it, that spark. Kai's eyes lingered a beat too long, dark and curious, and Brody's pulse stuttered, heat rising to his cheeks. He ducked his head, sketching invisible lines on the table, two figures, hands brushing. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of enforced piety and stolen glances. Mornings began with Ruth's rooster call at 5:45, herding them to the kitchen for scripture and oatmeal. Elias quoted proverbs like edicts, his voice gravel over steel, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. Brody nodded, mouth full, but his mind wandered to Kai's easy slouch in the halls, the way his fingers drummed rhythms on desk edges that mimicked waves crashing. Afternoons were chores, splitting wood with Elias, whose swings carried the weight of unspoken expectations, or weeding Ruth's victory garden, where she lectured on temptation snares. The world wants to soften you, Brody, she'd say, yanking thistles with vicious tugs. But steel bends, iron endures. Evenings brought the real forge, family devotions, where Elias led them in prayers for purity, his eyes flicking to Brody as if measuring fractures. One night, as Ruth closed the Bible with a snap like a judge's gavel, she fixed him with that flinty stare. You've been quiet, son. What's weighing on your heart? Brody swallowed, the lie forming like bile. Just missing mom and dad. Her expression softened a fraction, hand patting his knee. Grief is a trial from the Lord. But we've got space for you here. Real family. That word, family, twisted in him like a knife. He retreated to his room, door clicking shut, and pulled out his notebook, pages filling with fevered lines, Kai's laugh like thunder over the bay, his touch a horizon I chase. The pencil snapped in his grip, leads scattering like stars. Downstairs, the Harlan's voices murmured, a low tide of normalcy he couldn't breach. It was at the Autumn Harvest Festival, under strings of Edison bulbs swaying in the band-on breeze, that the dam cracked. The town square buzzed with hay bales and caramel apples, fiddles whining over the P8. Kai found him by the bonfire, flames licking the night sky, casting gold on his face. Dance? Kai asked, extending a hand, voice low enough to drown in the crackle. Brody's heart hammered, a wild thing caged. Ruth's watching. Forget her. Kai's fingers closed around his, warm and sure, pulling him into the throng. They moved awkwardly at first, bodies brushing in the crowd sway, then smoother, hips aligning to the rhythm. Kai's breath ghosted Brody's ear. You feel it too, right? This pull. Brody nodded, words lost, as Kai's hand settled at his waist, thumb tracing a circle that sent fire through his veins. For those stolen minutes, the world narrowed to heat and heartbeat, the accident's shadows banished by the press of another's pulse. But Ruth's voice sliced through like a scythe. Brody Harlan? What in heaven's name? She stood at the fire's edge, face pale as ash, Elias lumbering up behind. Kai released him, stepping back with a murmured sorry, but the damage bloomed instant and poisonous. Ruth's grip on Brody's arm was iron as she marched him to the truck, the festival's joy curdling behind them. In the cab's stifling silence, broken only by the engine's growl, Elias's knuckles whitened on the wheel. We saw enough. That boy's influence, it's the devil's work. Ruth's tears came hot and silent, staining her collar. We took you in to save you, Brody. From the sins that took your parents. The words landed like blows. What do you mean, took them? Elias's jaw clenched. Not now. But mark this, no more of that. Or you'll learn what real loss feels like. That night, locked in his room, key turned by Ruth's trembling hand, Brody pressed his ear to the wall, catching fragments of their argument below. The Ellis boy was weak. Same as them. We can't let history repeat. His parents' names, whispered like curses. The shadows, clawing back. Sleep evaded him, chased by dreams of twisted metal and Kai's retreating silhouette. Dawn broke grey, and with it came the first fracture in the Harlan facade. A letter slipped under his door, anonymous, scrawled in block print. Ask about the church fund. Your folks knew too much. Brody burned it in the sink, flames devouring the paper, but the ash settled in his gut, heavy as truth. The days following the festival stretched taut as bowstrings, each one a test of endurance under the Harlan's unyielding gaze. Ruth's meals grew portions of silent judgment, extra helpings of scripture with every plate, while Elias's chores escalated to Sisyphean labors, clearing storm-felled branches from the back 40, his axe swings a metronome of reprimand. Idle hands, Brody, he'd grunt, sweat beading on his brow like beads of a rosary. They craft the noose of temptation. School became Brody's fragile sanctuary, though even there the ripples spread. Whispers trailed him like smoke, Harlan kid's a freak, dancing with Rivera like that. Kai avoided his eyes in the halls, shoulders hunched against the storm, but once, in the library's shadowed stacks, he cornered Brody by the nautical history section. I'm sorry, Kai breathed, voice rough as sandpaper. My folks heard. Dad's all fire and brimstone now, says you're trouble. But I can't stop thinking about you. Brody's chest ached, a bruise blooming under ribs. It's poison here. They watch everything. Kai's hand found his, brief as a spark. Meet me at the beach. Midnight. We run, just for tonight. The promise hung between them, electric. That evening, as Ruth led devotions with a fervor bordering on frenzy, passages on Sodom flaying the air, Brody feigned compliance, his amens hollow echoes. When the house stilled, he slipped out the window, feet silent on the dew-slick roof, dropping to the pine mulch below. The night air tasted of salt and rebellion, the moon a sliver of complicity over the dunes. Kai waited at the water's edge, bonfire embers from distant beach parties glowing like fallen stars. He wore a wetsuit peeled to his waist, skin gleaming in the surf's phosphorescence. You came. Brody stepped close, the waves lapping their ankles. Couldn't not. Words dissolved into motion, Kai's arms pulling him under, mouths crashing like tide on jetty. It was clumsy, fervent, teeth-nicking lips, hands mapping uncharted territories with the urgency of the condemned. Brody tasted salt and desire, Kai's whispers fierce against his neck, you're mine, no matter what they say. They tumbled to the sand, bodies entwined, the ocean's roar drowning their gasps. For hours, time fractured, the world reduced to skin and heartbeat, Brody's fears ebbing with each cresting wave. Dawn crept pink-fingered, forcing separation. Tomorrow? Kai murmured, tracing Brody's jaw. Every tomorrow. But as Brody crested the dune toward home, a silhouette loomed, Elias, truck idling like a predator, headlights pinning him in place. The reckoning unfolded in the kitchen, dawn's light slanting accusatory through lace curtains. Ruth stood at the stove, pancakes charring in the pan, her back rigid as a gravestone. Elias loomed, fists clenched, the letter, crumpled in his palm. Found this in the trash, he growled, thrusting it forward. Who's stirring lies, boy? The church fund? Your parents' accident was God's will, not some conspiracy. Brody's blood iced. You read my stuff. Ruth whirled, spatula clattering. "We check for contraband." And this, she snatched a notebook from the counter, pages splayed open to his sketches, the intertwined figures damning in their intimacy. "This filth. Dancing with that boy, sneaking out. It's the same poison that rotted your blood." The air thickened, suffocating. Brody's voice emerged small, shattered. "You don't know me." Elias stepped forward, shadow engulfing him. "We know enough. The Ellises, your ma and pa, they strayed. Church warned them, but they embraced it. That night? They were running from judgment, not chasing shadows. Slipped on their own sin-slick road. Lies, all lies, but the venom seeped, doubt worming in." Brody bolted, stairs blurring underfoot, slamming his door against their pursuit. He curled on the bed, sobs racking silent, the crucifix's gaze now a mocking sentinel. Hours passed in that cocoon, until Ruth's knock softened to a plea. "Brody, please. We're trying to save you. Talk to Pastor Grimes. He helped your folks once." The name ignited a spark. Pastor Grimes, silver-haired shepherd of Bandon Bible Fellowship, the church the Harlans tithed to faithfully. The accident had happened miles from town, but Grimes had officiated the funeral, his eulogy a tapestry of divine mercy veiling unspoken thorns. That Sunday, they dragged him to service, Elias's grip of vice on his elbow. The pews creaked under congregants in starched collars, the air heavy with potpourri and piety. Grimes ascended the pulpit, voice booming like thunder over the bay, "Flee from sexual immorality. For the body is not meant for such." Brody's skin crawled, eyes fixed on the stained glass depicting Lot's flight from flames. After, in the fellowship hall's clamor of coffee and casseroles, Ruth steered him to Grimes's side. "Pastor," Brody's struggling. Like his parents did. Grimes's eyes, watery blue, fixed on him with paternal steel. "The boy needs guidance. I've seen this before, the Ellis temptation. But redemption's possible, son. Confess, and be reborn. Confess." The word clawed. That afternoon, alone in the house while the Harlans visited shut-ins, Brody rifled Elias's desk, drawers yielding tax stubs and tithe envelopes. Buried under, a manila folder labeled Ellis Matter, yellowed with age. Heart pounding, he flipped it open, police clippings from the crash, a coroner's report stamped accidental, but scribbled margins in Elias's hand, they knew about the fund. Grimes's orders, scare them straight. Fund. Embezzlement whispers from town gossip, church coffers drained for Grimes's mission trips. His parents, quiet activists, he'd learned post-mortem, aiding queer youth in Portland, had confronted it. A warning drive, perhaps, that ended in engineered ruin. Nausea surged. Brody pocketed a photo from the file, his parents, young and laughing at a pride rally, arms around each other, signs reading "Love Wins." Gay. Like him. The shadows weren't divine, they were men in collars, wielding fear as a blade. He confronted Ruth that evening, folder trembling in his hands. "This is murder. You covered for them." Her face crumpled, then hardened. "It was mercy. They were lost. We took you to spare you that path." Elias burst in, face thunderous. "Burn it, boy. Or we'll make sure no one's left to hear." The betrayal landed visceral, a gut punch echoing the crash's shatter. Brody fled to his room, barricading the door with the dresser, phone clutched like a lifeline. "Text to Kai, I need you. Now." But Kai's reply never came. Instead, the next dawn brought Kai's father at the door, face-etched fury, dragging a tear-streaked Kai by the collar. "Your boy's a predator. Stay away, or I'll see you all in hell." Isolation closed like jaws. School suspended Brody for disruptive behavior, the Harlans' influence weaving tight. Days bled into nights of whispered prayers and furtive sketches, now laced with rage, figures breaking chains, eyes fierce as his own. One storm-lashed evening, as thunder rattled the windows, Pastor Grimes arrived unannounced, Bible in hand, Ruth hovering like her acolyte. Time for exorcism of the spirit, son, he intoned, Elias pinning Brody to the chair. Hands anointed with oil, chants rising, Brody thrashed, screams swallowed by the gale. But in the frenzy, a memory surfaced, his mother's locket, hidden in his backpack since the wreck, engraved truth sets free. Inside, a tiny key, not to a lock, but perhaps a safe deposit box, mentioned in her will, untouched in Portland. As Grimes's grip faltered, Brody bolted, wrenching free, dashing into the rain. The truck keys jangled from the hook, he snatched them, engine roaring to life as lightning forked the sky. Elias pounded the hood, bellowing, but Brody floored it, tires spinning mud, Highway 101 unspooling north. Portland loomed, a beacon of rain-slick streets and hidden harbors. The bank vault yielded papers, ledgers detailing Grimes's siphons, letters from his parents pleading for exposure, a final note, if we fall, tell our boy, love isn't sin. It's survival. Evidence in hand, Brody holed up in a youth shelter, Kai's texts finally piercing the void, I'm coming. Dad, sorry, heard the truth from my aunt at church. Wait for me. But the shadows pursued. A call from Ms. Vargas, Harlan's filed for custody revocation. Grimes is lawyering up. Stay safe. The crisis peaked in a midnight meet at the shelter's alley, Kai bursting through the gate, soaked and desperate. I love you, he gasped, pulling Brody close. We'll fight. Their embrace shattered by sirens, Elias, tipped off, storming in with deputies. Kidnapping, he roared, as cuffs clicked cold on Brody's wrists. Jail cell stark, the world contracted to concrete and regret. But dawn brought Grimes's downfall, a whistleblower deacon, crumbling under conscience, leaking the ledgers to the press. Headlines screamed, pastor pilfers pews, crash cover-up exposed. Released into chaos, Brody faced the Harlans in court, their faces gaunt masks of ruin. Ruth wept, Elias stoic, but the judge's gavel fell merciful, adoption dissolved, guardianship to a Portland aunt unearthed from his mother's side. Healing didn't arrive in a rush of violins or sun-dappled montages, it crept in sideways, like fog off the Willamette, tentative and laced with salt. Brody's aunt, Lena Marquez, no blood relation, but a college friend of his mother's, a wiry Latina with laugh lines etched deep and a tattoo of a phoenix curling her forearm, welcomed him to her Queen and Row house in southeast Portland. The place hummed with life, mismatched furniture scavenged from estate sales, walls papered in protest posters from the 90s AIDS marches, and a kitchen perpetually redolent of pozole simmering on the stove. Mi casa es tu casa, mijo, Lena said on that first awkward evening, handing him a bowl steaming with hominy and pork, her eyes soft but unflinching. No rules here but honesty. Your mom was my sister in arms, fought the good fight. We'll honor that. Brody nodded, spoon hovering, the weight of the past 2 months a stone in his throat. The trial had been a media circus, Grimes indicted for fraud and manslaughter conspiracy, Elias and Ruth facing accessory charges, their empire of piety crumbling under depositions and donor defections. Bandon's faithful splintered, the church a ghost of stained glass and empty pews. Kai's family had relocated south, his father shamed into silence, but Kai himself clung fierce, daily calls, promises etched in pixels, Portland soon. NYU dreams wait for us. Nights were the hardest, insomnia's grip vice-tight. Brody would pace the creaky floors, locket clutched in fist, replaying the crash in high-def horror, the phantom headlights, his parents' final, frantic glances. Therapy sessions with Dr. Amir Khan, a soft-spoken Pakistani-American with a penchant for chai and metaphors drawn from Sufi poetry, peeled back the scar tissue layer by layer. Fear is a veil, Brody, Dr. Khan said one drizzly afternoon, rain pattering the office window like impatient fingers. Your parents didn't die for nothing. They died protecting a truth you now carry. What does that make you? A survivor, Brody whispered, the word tasting foreign, fragile. But in the quiet after, sketching by Lena's bay window overlooking Division Street's bustle, hipsters on fixes, Takiria's spilling laughter, it took root. His drawings evolved, no longer shadowed figures in chains, but pairs intertwined under rainbows, faces lit with unapologetic joy. Kai arrived in a battered VW bus 3 weeks later, surfboard lashed to the roof like a talisman, his grin splitting the gloom. Told you I'd chase the horizon. They walked the bridges at dusk, steel spanning the river like a vein of steel resolve, hands linked without fear, the city's pulse syncing with theirs. Portland embraced them, queer youth groups at Q Center, where Brody shared his story in halting bursts, earning nods of recognition, open mics at Alberta Street bars, where Kai's guitar strummed ballads of lost coasts. But the Harlan's shadow lingered, a bruise not fully faded. A letter arrived, postmark band on, in Ruth's careful script, "We failed you, but God forgives. Come home when you're ready. Love, despite all." Brody read it aloud to Lena over tamales, voice steady, then fed it to the fireplace, flames devouring the words without mercy. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," Lena murmured, squeezing his shoulder. "It's choosing your chains." Fall deepened, leaves carpeting the sidewalks in crimson and gold, and Brody enrolled at Grant High, a sprawling campus where diversity wasn't a buzzword but a lived mosaic. There, he met Theo Lang, a lanky junior with freckles like constellations and a stutter that melted in debate club. Theo's family ran a bookstore in the Pearl District, shelves groaning with queer lit from Baldwin to Vong, and he became Brody's anchor, study sessions dissolving into debates on identity, laughter bridging the gaps words couldn't. One crisp November evening, as they pored over Giovanni's room in the bookstore's alcove, Theo's knee brushed Brody's under the table, lingering. "You're brave, you know. Most kids your age. They'd break." Brody's pulse quickened, a familiar flutter, but tempered now by caution's alloy. Kai was a continent away, video calls their tether, but absence bred doubt, whispers of what if in the quiet hours. "Brave or broken," he replied, eyes meeting Theo's with honest ache. "Pick one." Theo's smile was gentle, hand covering his. "Both. And that's enough." The romance unfolded slow, like a Polaroid developing in dim light, shared shifts shelving books, walks along the esplanade where the river murmured approvals, first kiss behind a stack of red, white and royal blue, tasting of chamomile tea and possibility. Kai, when told over a crackling line, paused heavy, then, "You deserve this. But don't forget the boy who pulled you from the waves." Guilt gnawed, a tide-eroding resolve. Christmas approached, Lena's house strung with lights and luminarias, the air alive with merengue and stories of his mother's youth, protests in the streets, loves fierce and fleeting. Brody baked gingerbread with Theo, their fingers sticky, laughter echoing, but his sketches turned introspective, triptychs of fractured hearts mending, colors bleeding from storm grays to dawn pinks. The crisis crested on New Year's Eve, Portland's fireworks blooming over the West Hills like defiant stars. Kai surprised him, bus ticket stubbed in pocket, crashing Lena's party with a duffel and a sheepish grin. "Couldn't ring in without you." The trio, Brody, Kai, Theo, navigated the night awkward at first, champagne fizzing tension, but Lena's warmth dissolved it into games of charades and midnight confessions. As the clock struck, Kai pulled Brody aside to the fire escape, city sprawl glittering below. "I get it," Kai said, breath fogging the rail. "Theo's here. I'm chasing swells in Cali. But you're the anchor." Brody's throat tightened, tears pricking. "I love you both. How's that fair?" "It's not." Kai cupped his face, thumb brushing a tear. "But love's not a ledger. Write your story, Brody. I'll read every page." Theo, sensing the shift, offered quiet space, their bond evolving to something platonic, profound, a chosen brotherhood. Kai stayed through January, their reconnecti on a balm, lazy mornings in Brody's bed, bodies rediscovering rhythms, afternoons exploring the city's underbelly, drag brunches in Old Town, hikes in Forest Park where ancient firs whispered absolution. Spring thawed the last frosts, and with it came vindication's echo, Grimes sentenced to 15 years, the Harlan's community service in an irony-drenched twist, counseling queer youth under court mandate. Ruth reached out again, voice quavering over the line, "We're learning, Brody." Slowly. He met them once, in a neutral cafe off IA5, the air thick with unsaid sorries. Elias's hand shook pouring coffee, Ruth's eyes red-rimmed. "We thought we were right," she whispered. "But righteousness blinded us." Brody's response was measured, a bridge half built. You gave me structure. But love? That I found elsewhere. As summer crested, Brody stood at the ocean's edge in Cannon Beach, Kai beside him, waves gnawing haystack rock like old regrets. The locket hung heavy, but no longer a weight, a compass, pointing true north. You're free, Kai said, arm around his waist. Brody leaned in, salt on lips. We both are. In the horizon's haze, the shadows dissolved, leaving only light, human, flawed, enduring. Yet freedom, Brody learned, was no straight coastal road. It wound through ravines of doubt, switchbacks of memory that ambushed without warning. By sophomore year at Grant, the novelty of Portland's embrace had dulled to routine, mornings of oat milk lattes from Never Coffee, afternoons lost in AP-lit dissecting Wolf's waves of consciousness, evenings with Theo's book club debating intersectional identities over vegan tacos. Kai's visits strung like pearls, long weekends crashing on Lena's couch, their love a steady current beneath the city's hum. But the past was a tide that pulled insistent, resurfacing debris in quiet moments. A news alert on his phone, banned on church reopens under new leadership, apology tour sparks debate. Photos showed Elias and Ruth in the front row, faces drawn, hands clasped in penitence. The article quoted Ruth, "We hurt our boy deepest. Redemption starts with amends." Lena caught him staring at the screen over breakfast, her fork pausing mid-bite of huevos rancheros. You gonna respond? Brody shrugged, screen reflection ghosting his eyes. What if it's real? What if they changed? She sipped her café con leche, wisdom in her wrinkle. People change when the mirror cracks. But you don't owe them your glue. Theo, ever the archivist of emotions, suggested a road trip, catharsis on 4 wheels. They loaded Lena's Subaru with playlists of Hosier and Mitski, snacks pilfered from the bookstore's break room, and headed south on 101, the Pacific a constant companion. Stops blurred, clam chowder in Newport, tide pools at Yarchets where anemones waved like underwater flags of truce. Theo drove, his stutter easing in the wind-whipped freedom, sharing stories of his own coming out, parents who baked rainbow cake, siblings who flew pride flags from the porch. You're lucky, Brody said one sunset, perched on a driftwood throne, waves gnawing below. Mine. It was war. Theo's gaze was steady, freckles fading into twilight. Luck's relative. You fought and won. That's legend shit. They camped near Florence, tent zipped against the chill, fire crackling tails into the dark. Brody confessed the lingering ache, the way Elias's voice still echoed in dreams, Ruth's touch a phantom brand. Theo listened, then, write it out. Not sketches, words. Like your mom would. The idea lodged, fertile. Back in Portland, Brody dove into journaling, pages filling with raw verse, elegies for the boy in Bandon, odes to the man emerging. Lena enrolled him in a creative writing workshop at PSU, where adjuncts with tattoos and MFAs coaxed his voice from whispers to roars. Kai arrived for spring break, bearing a longboard and a proposal, summer in Santa Cruz. Surf camp. You and me, no ghosts. Brody hesitated, Theo's easy camaraderie a counterweight. And after? After's unwritten. Kai's kiss sealed it, fierce as undertow. But the Harlan's pull tightened. A package arrived, Elias's old Bible, margins annotated with Ruth's apologies, a check for college tucked inside like contrition's currency. The note, use this to build what we broke. We're proud, from afar. Tears blurred the ink. Brody called Ms. Vargas, voice steady, tell them thanks. But pride? I earned that myself. Graduation loomed, cap and gown a milestone laced bittersweet. Lena threw a party in the backyard, string lights twinkling like fireflies, neighbors mingling with queer elders sharing war stories from Stonewall's echo. Kai flew in, Theo toasting with sparkling cider, to Brody, the phoenix who burned brightest. In the quiet after, as guests dispersed, Brody slipped away to the rooftop, city lights sprawling like a promise kept. Kai joined him, hand in hand, but the air hummed with unspoken forks. I got into UC Santa Cruz, Kai said, voice soft. You? Read. Literature. Portland's ivy-clad haven, roots deep in the soil he'd reclaimed. The miles stretched, inevitable. Long distance. Brody ventured. Kai nodded, but his eyes held oceans. Or we let the waves carry us where they will. Heart-fracturing slow, Brody chose truth. I love you. But I need to stand alone first. Kai's embrace was absolution, tears mingling. Then sail true, Captain. Summer unfolded in Santa Cruz's sun-drenched haze, Brody crashing Kai's dorm, but days exploring solo, boardwalks alive with buskers, redwoods whispering ancient consents. He surfed clumsily, salt-stinging eyes each wipe out a lesson in rising. Letters to Theo arrived like lifelines, found a poem in the fog. Miss your steady. Fall quartered him at Reed, campus a labyrinth of Gothic arches and intellectual fire. Professors like Dr. Ilara Voss, a queer icon with silver dreads and a thesis on Baldwin's expatriate heart, saw his spark. Your voice cuts, Harlan, she said after workshop, red pen circling his piece on Foster Forges. Publish it. The essay, The Shadows on 101, hit the campus scene, then rippled to the Advocate, words weaponized into Witness. Responses flooded, letters from foster kids echoing his isolation, activists inviting panels. Brody spoke at a Portland Pride rally, voice amplified over the crowd, love isn't adopted. It's innate. And truth? It outlives the lies. The Harlans attended, uninvited, standing at the periphery, Ruth's hand in Elias's, faces weathered by Grace's grind. After, they approached, tentative as supplicants. We read your words, Elias rumbled, voice gravel humbled. They're a mirror we needed. Ruth extended a photo, the family, pre-crash, all four at a church picnic, Brody toddler small, parents beaming. This was real too. Flawed, but yours. Brody took it, fingers brushing hers, a circuit closing. Flawed's human. Welcome to it. No full reunion, but threads mended, occasional calls, Ruth's recipes shared via text, Elias's gruff advice on Reed's lit canon. Kai dated a marine bio major, waves of amicable drift, Theo found love in a barista with poetry tattoos. Brody's heart, once a storm-tossed vessel, steadied, dates with a sculptor named Riley, whose hand shaped clay and kisses with equal care. Sophomore spring, he returned to Bandon, solo drive down 101, Dune's unchanged sentinel. The Harlan house stood repaired, garden blooming defiant. Ruth hugged him fierce, Elias's clap on the back a benediction. We volunteer now, Ruth said over tea, steam curling like released breaths. At the youth center. Teaching what we learned too late. Brody nodded, peace settling like dusk. Better late than shadowed. As he drove north, sun dipping gold, the locket warmed against his chest. His parents' note, folded within, love survives. It did, in him, unbroken. Adulthood's threshold wasn't a portal but a gradual unveiling, layers of self sloughing like serpent skin under Portland's relentless reinvention. At 20, Brody Harlan, adopted no more, but claimed in fuller measure, navigated Reed's hallowed halls with the ease of one who'd mapped his own myth. His thesis Brood, a memoir novel hybrid, coastal confessions, weaving Foster Forges with queer odysseys, his parents' spectres transmuted to guides. Dr. Voss championed it, her endorsements opening doors to MFA whispers at Iowa, Columbia. Riley entered like a brushstroke of cerulean, met at a First Thursday art walk in the Pearl, where galleries spilled light and longing onto cobblestones. He was 22, lanky with ink-stained fingers and hazel eyes that held the patience of potter's wheels. Your sketch, he said, nodding to the pad Brody clutched, a quick study of the crowd's kaleidoscope faces. It's got ache. Good ache. They talked till closing, wandering to Voodoo Donut for bacon maple absurdities, laughter bridging the years. Riley's studio loft in the east side hummed with kilns and half-formed forms, abstract torsos emerging from clay, echoes of bodies he'd loved and lost. ART's therapy without the couch, he quipped, hands deep in slip as Brody watched, mesmerized. Their rhythm built organic, mornings of coffee and croquis, where Brody posed nude on a stool. Riley's gaze reverent, not ravenous, evenings cooking paella from his abuela's recipes, wine loosening tongues to tales of transatlantic routes. Sex was revelation, slow, exploratory, Riley's touch mapping scars both seen and unseen, whispering beautiful against Brody's collarbone like incantation. But integration unearthed old fault lines. Lena, ever the matriarch, grilled Riley over Sunday asado. You break him, you answer to me. Kai, visiting for a reading, clapbacks with easy nostalgia, but Theo's email lingered poignant, proud of your light. Minds flickering, new city, new start. Right soon. The Harlan's evolution tracked parallel, tentative overtures blooming to milestones. Ruth's first pride pin, mailed with a card, wore it to Bible study. Stirred the pot. Elias's woodworking gifts, a carved box for Broadist drafts, dovetails tight as mended trust. A Thanksgiving in Bandon tested waters, the table laden with turkey and tamales, Lena's spice mingling with Ruth's pie. Conversation skirted thorns at first, weather, Reed's quirks, then delved, Elias admitting, voice low, I was the shadow once. Feared what I couldn't control. Ruth's hand on his, and I enabled. But seeing you thrive. It's our grace. Brody's throat bobbed. You're part of that thrive. Messy, but mine. Post-feast walk on the beach, waves erasing footprints, Riley squeezed his hand. Family's a sculpture, chipped, but whole. Challenges carved deeper grooves. Coastal confessions queried agents, rejections piling like driftwood, too raw, market saturated. Broadist out-crested, nights pacing Lena's guest room during a visit, Riley's calls a lifeline across the river. Throw it in the kill, Riley urged. Fire makes it stronger. A breakthrough, acceptance at Bread Loaf Writers' Conference, Vermont's green embrace a world away. Brody flew east, leaves aflame, workshops with luminaries who saw his voice as blade and balm. There, he met Julian Hale, a poet from Brooklyn with locks like midnight ropes and verses that bled vulnerability. Late-night bonfires by Lake Champlain, Julian's words wove spells, your prose haunts like a good ghost, present, not punitive. The flirtation sparked innocent, shared drafts, Raki-fueled debates on queerness in canon, but guilt shadowed it, Riley's trust a distant star. Back in Portland, confession spilled over dim sum, it was nothing physical. But the pull. I felt seen. Riley's eyes, hurt-flecked but steady, nodded. Seems dangerous. But honesty? That's the glue. They rebuilt, therapy joint now, Dr. Khan's couch accommodating too, unpacking polyamory's edges, boundaries drawn like kill lines. Summer brought publication, a small press snatched confessions, cover a stylized 101 curving into infinity. Launch at Powell's, shelves towering witnesses, Lena beaming front row, Harlan's in from Bandon with awkward pride. Kai texted from California, bought 3. Surfing your waves. Theo Skyped from Seattle, toasted with micro brews. Legend. Readings followed, Seattle's Elliott Bay, La Skylight, New York's Bureau of General Services, queer meccas where audiences leaned in, tears mirroring his. A fan letter from a Bandon teen, your story saved me from the strictest home. Shadows scared, but light wins. The humaneness deepened in quiet acts, Brody volunteering at Outside Inn, shelter for queer youth, sharing sandwiches and stories, his presence a beacon. One kid, Jamie, 16 with fresh bruises and defiant dye, echoed his younger self. How'd you not break? Brody smiled, locket glinting. I did. Glued back stronger. Riley's proposal came autumnal, leaves swirling in Alberta Park, ring simple, silver wave etched. Marry me? Not to own, but to ocean together. Yes, Brody breathed, kiss ceiling amid joggers and dog walkers. Wedding wove tapestries, Portland courthouse, Lena officiating with heartfelt vows, Harlan's in the pews, Ruth dabbing eyes, Elias beaming gruff. Kai best man, toast salter sweet, to the boy who taught me love's not a riptide, it's the board that carries you. Honeymoon in Big Sur, cliffs plummeting to surf, they hiked trails etched by time, bodies renewing promises under star-pricked skies. Back home, life led Riley's gallery show, Brody's adjunct gig at PSU, teaching freshmen to mine their truths. A decade's arc bent toward legacy. At 30, Brody published Tides of Truth, non-fiction on foster queerness, Oprah's book club nod catapulting it national. Talk shows beckoned, Morrow couch, tears, and triumphs, but he chose podcasts, intimate spaces where listeners exhaled shared breaths. The Harlans aged gracefully, band on home a haven for their volunteer work, Ruth leading support circles, Elias crafting furniture for shelters. Grandkids came via Lena's daughter, chaotic joy in the mix. Brody and Riley fostered briefly, a shy trans boy named Alex, 12, who bloomed under their care before reuniting kin. One eve, porch swing creaking, Alex long gone but echoes lingering, Riley murmured, "We did good." Brody nodded, head on shoulder. "We survived better." In the distance, ocean called eternal, romantic, raw, redemptive. The years accrued like patina on bronze, burnishing Brody's edges without dulling their keenness. At 35, he stood at the helm of his own press, Harbor Light Books, championing voices from the margins, trans memoirs from Appalachia, sapphic sci-fi laced with Latinx lore, all printed on recycled stock with covers that whispered resilience. The office, a converted warehouse in St. John's, overlooked the Columbia's moody flow, windows framing freighters like metaphors for journeys half-made. Riley's ceramics graced galleries from LA to Berlin, his forms evolving, abstract lovers intertwined, glazes pooling like shared breaths. Their home, a fixer-upper bungalow in Selwood, evolved too, herb garden rioting with basil and lavender, studio shed where clay met ink in collaborative chaos. No children of body, but mentorships bloomed, interns at Harbor Light, workshops with Riley's clay collectives, a network of chosen kin. Lena's passing at 68 hit like a rogue wave, pancreatic shadow, swift and merciless. Her memorial in Laurelhurst Park drew hundreds, queer elders trading stories of her 90s activism, youth she'd housed in crises past. Brody eulogized, voice steady over the Willamette's lap, "She didn't adopt me. She claimed me. And in that, taught me family is verb, not noun." The Harlans attended, frailer now, Elias's beard fully silver, Ruth's bun softened to a bob. Their embrace post-speech was fierce, Elias's whisper gravel rough, "Your auntie was steel. Like you." Grief's undertow pulled Brody under, night sleepless with Riley's arm anchor. They traveled to heal, Mexico's Yucatan cenotes, waters sapphire clear, diving into underworlds that mirrored inner depths. There, amid Mayan ruins, Brody scattered Lena's ashes into a sacred sinkhole, words tumbling, dive deep, Hermana. Surface stronger. Kai resurfaced sporadically, life a coastal drift, surf shop owner in Ventura, partner a dive instructor named Marco, visits laced with board wax and belly laughs. "Still chasing your prose," he'd say, autographed copies stacking his shelves. Theo, settled in Vancouver with a husband and graphic novels, collaborated on Confessions' graphic adaptation, panels vivid as healed wounds. A new shadow loomed at 40, diagnosis for Riley, early rheumatoid, joints protesting the wheel's turn. Treatments taxed, but their pact held, mornings of turmeric tea and Tai Chi in the garden, Riley's hands adapting to voice-activated kilns. Brody's writing turned confessional again, clay and ink, dual memoir of Love's Forge, sales funding adaptive tech for artists. Crisis crested when Harbor Light teetered, pandemic's gut punch shuttering indie presses. Brody pivoted online, virtual salons, crowd-funded anthologies, but doubt gnawed, am I enough? Riley, from his studio chair, eyes fierce, you're the tide, a more. Ebb, flow, endure. Salvation came collective, Lena's old network rallying, grants from queer foundations, a viral TikTok of Brody reading confessions to mask-clad kids. The press stabilized, stronger, hybrid. The Harlan's twilight waned gentle. Elias first, heart-faltering mid-sermon volunteer, peaceful, Bible open to Proverbs reclaimed. Ruth followed a year on, pneumonia's quiet thief, but not before a final band-on visit, Brody reading drafts aloud by her bedside, her hand frail in his. "You forgave us," she breathed. "That's the real end." Their funerals wove closure, Elias's plot by the dunes, Ruth beside, graves marked with simple stones, loved, learned, let go. Brody scattered soil from Portland's rose gardens, petals pink as dawn. At 50, grey threading his temples like silver surf, Brody keynoted at creating change, DC's convention hall echoing his words, from strictest chains to widest seas, queerness is not survival, it's symphony. Play loud. Riley, beside him on stage, hand entwined, their love a quiet crescendo. Post-speech, a young foster kid approached, your book got me out. How do I thank you? Brody knelt, eyes level. Live it forward. Homeward, they adopted a dog, a mutt named Tide, all wiry energy and loyal licks, family in fur. Evenings on the porch, book in lap, Riley sketching beside, the river's murmur a lullaby. Legacy layered, Harborlight's imprints in libraries nationwide, scholarships in Lena's name, a band-on youth center renamed Ellis Haven, his parents' truth etched in beams. Kai's daughter, a surfer poet, interned summers, Theo's graphic novel One Eisner's. One solstice, Brody revisited the crash site, Highway 101's curve now memorialized with wildflowers, community planted, signs reading Drive for Love. He stood, wind whipping, locket open to the note, Love Survives. It had, through betrayals burned to ash, crises clayed to form, healings hummed in harmony. Riley joined, arm around waist. Full circle. Brody smiled, horizon infinite. Full sail. Decades distilled to essence, Brody at 65 surveyed a life etched not in regret's acid but wisdom's warm patina. The bungalow, now ringed by sunflowers Lena would have adored, stood testament, additions for Riley's adaptive studio, a library annex groaning with Harborlight firsts, Tide's successor, a lab named Salty, sprawling at their feet. Portland had grayed with them, bridges burnished by time, the Willamette vein pulsing stories. Riley's arthritis had mellowed to manageable ache, hands gnarled but guiding still, master classes via Zoom, sculptures touring MoMA. Their love, no longer firestorm but hearthglow, warmed anniversaries with quiet rituals, clay handprints pressed annual, vows renewed over paella, gazes holding volumes. Harborlight thrived under protégé stewardship, Brody emeritus, advising from a desk cluttered with fan mail from global queers, a Nairobi activist citing confessions in decriminalization briefs, a Sydney teen's coming out essay echoing his hooks. He mentored remotely, voice gravel softened but steel true, right the wound. Heal the reader. Family sprawled vast, Kai's grandkids crashing holidays, surf lessons in the backyard pool, Theo's twins, artists both, illustrating new imprints, Alex, the fostered boy long grown, now a therapist in Seattle, crediting them in his TEDx, they showed me home's a harbor, not a cage. The Harlan's absence softened to fond spectre, annual toasts at graves, band-on visits to Ellis Haven, now a beacon housing dozens, plaques bearing Ruth's recipes in the kitchen. A letter from Elias's great-niece, a trans pastor, your forgiveness seeded this grove. Challenges late bloom gentle, Brody's own health waiver, prostate shadow, surgery swift, recovery in Riley's care, hospital bed by the garden where birdsong drowned beeps. 80 more years, Riley teased, spooning broth. We've got plots to plot. Emerging, Brody channeled it, silver tides, reflections on aging queer, chapters on love's laird, losses alchemized. It bestseller-ed soft, book clubs from Provincetown to Palm Springs dissecting, Harlan proves endurance is erotic. Travel beckoned scaled back, train to NYC for Stonewall 55th, marching arm in arm with Riley, crowds chanting echoes of youth. Berlin Schwule's museum exhibit of Riley's work, them toasting with schnapps amid marble lovers. Home always called strongest, porch swings creak a metronome. Crisis final crested subtle, Riley's decline, hearts falter after a show in Taos. Hospital hush, monitors beeping dirges, Brody at bedside, hand clasped. We made beauty, Riley whispered, eyes fading coastal. Keep throwing pots. He slipped at dawn, Portland waking gold. Funeral by the river, ashes to Willamette's flow, scattered from the Hawthorne Bridge, friends' voices carrying odes. Brody eulogized, he shaped me from raw earth. Now, I stand fired. Grief's year was tidal, swells of solitude, ebbs of memory's balm. Writing stalled, then surged, letters to Riley, unsent but soul-soothing. Kai flew in monthly, surf therapy on the coast, Theo's care packages of graphic novels, dog-eared comforts. Renewal rooted unexpected, a workshop invite to Oregon's queer writers' retreat, Nesco in Sands where Bandon's ghosts met Portland's pulse. There, amid bonfires and prompts, Brody met Elias, no, not the namesake, but a young poet, 25, with blue eyes piercing as his youth's. Elias's verses bled foster fractures, adoptions aborted, queerness cloaked. You remind me, Brody said one dusk, waves lapping their driftwood seat, of starting over. Elias's smile tentative. Starting? Or circling back? Their connection brewed cautious, shared hikes, manuscript swaps, laughter light as gulls. No rush to label, mentorship first, then murmurs of more. At 66, Brody embraced the unknown, heart open as unkilned clay. Legacy crystallized, harbor light endowed, Brody's archives at Reed, scholarships for foster scribes. Ellis Haven expanded, his keynote annual, Truth Isn't Revelation Once. It's ripple eternal. One autumn equinox, Brody returned to the crash curve, wildflowers rampant, a plaque now, in memory of Daniel and Clara Ellis, Love's Road endures. He traced the letters, tears salt traced. Nearby, Harlan family, forged in grace. Fullness swelled, not closure, but continuum. Homeward, Elias waiting, the young poet, with coffee and a sketch, two figures, hands linked, horizon boundless. Ready for the next chapter? Elias asked, voice hope-hued. Brody smiled, locket warm. Always. In the rear view, shadows fled, road unspooling light. Epilogue's not a curtain but a fade to wide, life at 72 a mosaic of moments mosaicked seamless. Brody Harlan, Silvermane sage, divides days between Selwood's sun-dappled porch, salty two at heel. Elias, the poet, now partner in all but ink, tending the herbage, and guest lectures at coastal colleges, voice a lighthouse beam for wayward wordsmiths. Harborlight sails under diverse captains, imprints blooming biennial, tides of tomorrow, youth voices from foster fronts. Riley's gallery wing at PNCA bears his name, ceramics catching light eternal. Visits their meditative, Brody tracing glazes, whispering updates, your phoenix flies still. Kai surf retreats incorporate readings, grandkids paddling out with confessions dog-eared, Theo's graphic empire illustrates global editions, cameos of their youth etched in panels. Ellis Haven thrives, a village of tiny homes hugging Bandon's dunes, 80 souls housed, schooled, healed. Brody trustees quarterly, story circles under spruces where Ruth's pies fuel truths. The Harlan's plot blooms wild, daisies from his mother's locket soil, a bench inscribed sit. Reflect. Rise. Elias, young, and he collaborate, chapbooks co-authored, echoes entwined, verses volleying love's long arc. Their bond, born late, burn steady, no foster forge, but chosen kill, nights of chess and sonnets by the fire. Health's tide ebbs gentle, Brody's annual's routine, walks with cane carved by Elias's uncle, dovetails echoing old apologies. A scare, hip fracture from a stumble, binds them tighter, hospital haikus scribbled bedside. Legacy's loom weaves wide, Obama citation for queer advocacy, confessions curriculum staple, foster reform bills bearing Ellis clause. A documentary, Road to Revelation, streams Netflix, Oscar whispers for its raw reel of the crash reenact, Harlan testimonies tear-streaked. One solstice eve, Brody drives 101 south, Elias shotgun, playlist of his parents' vinyl ghosts, Joni Mitchell's Blue, waves in stereo. At the curve, they halt, wildflowers knee-high, plaque sun-gilt. Full circle, Elias murmurs, hand in his. Brody nods, locket open, love survives. And multiplies. They picnic dunetop, sandwiches from Ruth's recipe, wine from Theo's vineyard tie-in. Distant, surfers dot the break Ikai's lineage, perhaps. Laughter lifts, light as gulls. Homeward, sunset paints the cab amber, road a ribbon of reclaimed grace. Shadows? Mere myths, banished by dawn's decree. In the life he authored, from strictest snare to widest sea, Brody knows, humanity's not in perfection, but persistence. Love, the ultimate reveal, endures all.